everybody. I'm Jeff Apodaca.
Eric Strauss.
And welcome to our, I guess, the second edition of Let's Meet in the Middle.
Edition dose, Meet in the Middle.
Hopefully you enjoyed last week's show and it wasn't too political and hopefully there wasn't too many people yelling at each other.
Yeah, and I think we're going to make a concerted effort this week to definitely push to the middle and find where we have some common ground on issues. Eventually we'll have a middle tracker, I think. So here's where we're at in the middle.
I think so. And look,
because let me give you the visual of how far apart we are on certain things. See,
and then we'll give you a visual on how many things we do actually agree on. But today's topic is about fatherhood. Eric and I were actually at the kitchen where we have kind of breakfast normally. By the way, great chicken fried green chili.
Oh yeah,
you had it with Christmas, but I had it with green chili.
You did.
Great.
I think you were being the eggs and bacon guy.
No, but
you started eating off my plate.
Yours, and then next time
let's be honest. If we're gonna do this show, we gotta be honest with each other.
If you're Osuna near 2nd Street, go to the kitchen.
It's delicious.
Greatest chicken fried steak, eggs,
chili, and then they have this. It's a hash brown casserole.
Yeah, I don't know what it was.
It was cheese
awesome.
and hash browns like in a cake.
So it's mine
and
it
Eric. Was really good.
Yeah, so it's mine and Eric's new little favorite
secret hideaway. Yes.
But anyway, but today's episode we're going to be talking about fatherhood, and we have some great guests. Steve Stucker, local legend. Johnny,
hardest working guy on television, by the way. I don't even know how he's up.
I'm on television.
Radio.
That's
right. Yeah, I'm in radio. Now I'm the hardest working guy on television.
And then we have Johnny from, he's executive director from Fathers New Mexican, New Mexico. And then we're going to have Officer Pat, that I call him, a state representative, who's going to be in later talking about restorative justice and programs within schools to help fathers and help kids out.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a great time.
But, at the end of the day, when you look at the bulk of New Mexico's problems, and this was the reason we came up with this show, a lot of it comes down to parenting. I mean, and
working together. Yep.
And those key foundational parenting issues that New Mexico faces time and time again helps put us at the bottom of every list.
Well, it's funny, when Jackie and I found out we're having twin boys, our minister gave us a book called Let Boys Be Boys. Small read. Jackie gave it to me to read about how to raise boys. About halfway through the book, I was crying, I was laughing, I was joking, and my wife goes, "How do you like the book?" And I closed the book and I started laughing. I said, I don't need to read the book. You need to read the book. This was my childhood. And it was about how our society doesn't allow boys to be boys and grow up to be men, and how sometimes we're having some of those issues.
See, you're going to get painted. You're writing.
No, but I think those are issues
now.
for everybody. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat.
You haven't been in the media as long as I have with that kind of stuff.
The debate in our household this week was my son Gage with Grandma Clara. We allowed my son to color his hair purple.
So that's not happening. That's not happening in my household.
We allowed Gage to color his hair purple for the summer. So now he's the cool kid in the neighborhood. And Grandma Clara was having that debate because I told my sons, "Holy cow! When I was that age, my mother used to put me back on the chair because my hair wasn't short enough."
Well, see, and I'll give you for instance in my fathering technique how that wouldn't happen in my household. I call it the Strauss Jedi mind trick. So, because I guarantee you, my boy bounced this idea off me once, and I had to give the old. Oh, really? Oh, you want a blue streak in your hair? Oh, because it got really popular at his school.
Right.
And, I can see where you want to express your individuality, and I can see where, so the two sides of me were a little torn, and I'll tell you how I dealt with that in a bit as we move through this fatherhood topic today. Because I'm a little torn on that.
Look.
The piercings too.
Because
you're going to be wrestling with the piercing.
I'm not going to do with piercings, and
I
actually have a tattoo. So my son haven't asked for tattoos yet, but they think that. Well, my tattoo is a cross with my son's initials and their birth date.
Gotcha.
For a symbol of my faith and my family commitment.
Yeah, I have a really bad tattoo, so I'm kind of the example of what not to do, and that's what I tell my son all the time is, you don't have to make mistakes. I've made all of them for you. Right. Trust me. And that's part of what we'll talk about in terms of our fathering technique.
Well, and today's episode is all about fatherhoods. And I know we're on Facebook Live as we tape the show. So Facebook, please share it with your friends. Ask questions. We're really going to be talking about fatherhood. So most importantly, let's get going. Let's meet in the middle.
In a time of a divided America, two people from different points of view sit down to talk about the problems, to talk about ideas, to talk about life, and to find common ground. It is now time for Let's Meet in the Middle with your hosts Eric Strauss and Jeff Apodaca.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle with Jeff Apodaca, Eric Strauss. Find us on Facebook at Meet in the Middle NM. So you can hit us up on Facebook. We're going to be broadcasting live every week. I think it should be nothing short of fun making fun of Jeff and Eric as we really try to do something revolutionary.
Well,
and that's have two different ideas and find some common ground.
And last week in our first show, we had over 400 chats within our show during the show. So we want the Facebook audience to be involved too. So as we tape the show, please follow us at Meet in the Middle NM. And then obviously we're at New Mexico Democrats for Democracy, House of Strauss. There's many ways you can find us on Facebook. We're on Instagram and Twitter.
At House 770 Strauss is my Twitter handle. And so we actually have Instagram. What's the Instagram? It's Meet in the Mid. Oh, no, that's our Twitter.
That's our Twitter.
At Meet in the Mid NM.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Meet in the Mid, both on Instagram and Facebook. But
yep.
Anyway, today's topic, we're going to be talking about fatherhood. I see as a dad of twin boys. Jackie and I talk about this all the time. You know, my wife, I brought these books in. Jackie loves to read books. And so she brought these books in. But there's some great books out there. Being a father of twin boys, there's some great books out there that Jackie's read, and I've read some of them. But how to talk to your kids so that they'll listen. Bringing up boys. And again, like one of the books I read was Let Boys Be Boys. Sometimes in our society, we hold boys back from letting them be boys. I remember when the kids were first born, you know, Jackie grew up with all girls. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a loud Hispanic household, right? And so, but I laugh because when Jackie, Jackie, when the boys are like 2 or 3, when boys can get crazy, it was so funny because she would always kind of, you could tell the 3, as she calls them, the 3 boys, because she considers me one of them, kind of driving her a little nuts. And as a dad, I'm like, that's normal. Right, because you know boys are gonna be active.
A male-dominant
boys are gonna be
household.
active.
Yeah.
Boys are gonna be jumping. And one of the books I read is Let Boys Be Boys. One of the stories in it was talking about how this couple was trying to keep their sons away from like any kind of guns, shooting, playing war, which when I was a kid. And one day the father came downstairs and he was adamant about not letting his boys play with any guns or play war or anything like that. And
I don't know how to eye roll any bigger.
Well, but
Jack.
see, but and so he kind of realized that the boys at the breakfast table in this book they were talking about, the boys at the breakfast table had literally taken their toast and made guns out of it and were shooting each other.
He got suspended from school for carving a Pop-Tart gun. Remember?
Well, and my point is specifically, you know, at 3, 4, 5 years of age, it's extremely important, specifically boys, and I have sons, so we're not like discounting girls because you have girls, or you have one girl.
One girl, one boy.
Yeah, but I think it's important that we talk about it because we have. I believe we have a crisis. You know, there's a new economic plan out, and I want to just talk about this real quickly. There's a new economic plan out about New Mexico. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go into the plan, but it was funded by Economic Development, by Forum, by the business community, and Albuquerque's president right now. But when you look at it, the largest segment of our state, if you look at all the states at the younger generation, we're one big blue state, and I'll have them put up a chart real quick. But you can see the baby boomers were exploding in our state, but the young Gen X's, the young generation, is leaving.
I mean, we're solidly blue if you look at that.
On that.
So,
and around us.
solidly blue.
Here's my biggest concern. When you look at the study, we've lost 9% of our population in elementary and secondary schools in New Mexico. 9%. When you look at Texas is up 9%, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, they're all up 5 to 11%. And why do I bring that up? Because when you look at that, when you look at the next workforce, the millennials, the 20, 30-year-olds, we're ranked 51st. D.C. beats us. We're ranked 51st for young people wanting to work in our state. Folks, that's our next generation of entrepreneurs. That's our next generation of jobs. So if we don't solve that today, we're going to be a major problem, because when you look at one of the other slides, you look at Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, and Texas, all ranked in the top 10 for the young people moving there.
Right.
We're ranked 50th.
Well, and because do I really? Who's been in control of this state the longest?
Well,
Capo?
again,
who's been in control of the
let's
state
not
the
worry
longest?
about
But
politics
let's
right
get
now.
let's
Let's
just
talk
go
about
back.
policies.
Okay, but let's
talk
go
about
back to
policies.
fatherhood, because your upbringing and my upbringing are completely different, and I think it rolls over into the way we parent our children. So just to recap, I never had a good father figure. I didn't have good mentorship. I pretty much have been on my own a long time.
Right, we've talked about that.
So, and you had this solid, really active father. Mm-hmm. And I think it shows, and it's one of the things I wrestle with now raising my son is, because I have him in gymnastics right now, and that sport eats up a lot of time. And I don't know that he's getting as much of a diverse experience like baseball, football, soccer, that type of thing. And we've done that stuff with him, but he's always gone back to gymnastics. So that's just one thing that in my mind, I think about. I didn't start playing organized sports until I was a freshman in high school.
See, and I started playing organized sports 6-7 years of age.
Freshman in high school.
We talked about this the other day. My sons don't really play organized sports. One's in Taekwondo, and one's actually in a rock band learning to play the piano.
Yeah.
Asher is. And engages into ninja and into scootering, and they're all into the gaming stuff, right? They're all into gaming stuff. But one of the issues I saw with my kids were doing some team sports is today the way it's set up is now being a dad, and I've seen this coming around for the last 10 years, the last 20 years, is when I was a kid playing sports, they had after-school activities. They had sports programs tied to our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools.
Yeah.
So I told my friends the other day, when you lose, you lost with your friends. When you win with your friends.
Well,
and so I look at
I'll echo that. And just thinking about my own life, because I always go back to common sense stuff. I've learned way more in my losses than my wins.
Oh, absolutely.
My losses have taught me way more than my wins have. And I try to echo that into my son and daughter all the time. You're not going to win everything. And as a matter of fact, if you did, I think you'd be in trouble. Well, and because you're going to miss some really big life
one
lessons.
of my points, and I think we're seeing this with boys today, with one of my issues is that we've cut so many of these programs out of our school system and our budgeting that our kids are not staying engaged in schools, our boys and girls. Boys have a much higher dropout rate now in middle school and high schools than girls do. And then when you look at it, everything's become club. And so now it's all club.
And it's expensive.
And it's expensive. So now what's happening is the kids, and mostly in New Mexico, it's Hispanic kids, but kids of color or kids at a lower income base are not having those opportunities. And so now those kids, those after-school programs have been cut. We're not teaching those kids how to be fathers or parenting. And so they're out there on their own. And in today's world, good, bad, or indifferent, we have parents that are basically working 2 or 3 jobs and kind of putting themselves kind of like not around helping their parents.
And I'll give you the other side of that too. By high school, they think the kids can raise themselves.
And that's,
let me tell you, it's not just that they're working 2 to 3 jobs. It's also they want to have kids and then have a social life because they had the kids too early, and then they still want to party and have the fun. And there's a lot of parenting that needs to be done.
Well, let's go to commercial break. We want to thank our sponsors, and we'll be back with Steve Stucker and Johnny about Fathers New Mexico and talk a little bit more with them.
We are connected by rivers, by mountain ranges, by unique culture. But what connects us more than ever? Renewable energy from wind and solar. P&M delivers renewable energy every day to our homes, businesses, and institutions across the state.
And they are committed to 100% emissions-free energy by 2040.
After all, we call this home too. P&M, together for New Mexico.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle with Jeff Apodaca and Eric Strauss. Our two guests today, TV legend Steve Stucker from KOB TV, hardest working man in television. And every time I think I'm doing good in the community, I just call Steve and I'm immediately humbled. And our other guest, Johnny Wilson, is part of Fathers for New Mexico. And we welcome you guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
I
Really
appreciate it.
it.
Absolutely.
Today's show, we're talking about fatherhood. We're talking about how, Eric and I, when we decided to start this show, Let's Meet in the Middle, it kind of started on a political kind of topics, but as we got together, he's a father of two young kids, I'm a father of two young boys, and it was amazing how no matter what political thing we're talking about, we always ended the conversations, always came back to our fatherhood, our parenting, things like that, and we would get into conversations about, 40% of the kids today don't have fathers. Some of the programs we've cut back from our public schools that we had when I was in school. And so thank you guys for joining us today, because we'd love to hear your guys' input, specifically Steve and Johnny, what you guys are doing out in the community. But Steve, let's start with you. Like, what do you see the biggest issues today within, whether it's in our schools or fathering or parenting?
So many, and you guys made some great points in the first segment. We have to let boys be boys. Yeah. I mean, we want them to sit still in a classroom environment for hours at a time. It's not natural. Then they're diagnosed as being ADHD, and we put them on meds, and just goes downhill from there a lot of times. The other thing is just absentee fathers, and that's tied in politically and socially and in so many different ways. I was talking with Johnny before we came on. I did jail ministry for youth in detention for about 7-8 years at the D Home and NYDDC. I'd get a new group of kids, typically it'd be 15 boys, and when we'd start, I'd say, how many of you grew up in a home without a dad or don't even know who your father is? Every single time a minimum of 12 hands would go up.
12 out of how many?
At 15. Wow. And then I'd say, and how many of you are angry about that? And those hands would shoot into the air. And so not having a good father figure is a big problem. You mentioned you had a good dad. I did too. But my dad did not have a good father figure at all, yet he transformed himself into a great father. So it can be done, and I'm convinced that it's goes to the church, to social agencies, to groups like Johnny's, to recognize this issue and to get together and come to some agreement on what needs to be done. I don't think we can put it all on the schools, certainly not politicians' jobs, although they have some place in it. I think it goes back to the families.
And it's funny, Steve, you say that, because I was, as we were prepping for this, I started looking. In the 50s, only 5% of the households were single mom households. Today, it's over 40%.
Well, and to that point, I think the one thing that's going unnoticed or unheralded for sure is the single father households, because there are many dads where the mom is splitting now. Trust me, I'm a high school teacher. Yeah. I see it a lot.
Yeah. One of the fastest growing demographics in fact family structure in America is the single father led household.
Yeah, but the media doesn't pick up on this.
Well, it's still a relatively small number, but
correct.
We also need to talk about single parent homes. We need to recognize, and we don't often in our statistics recognize, that there is another parent in the picture, that parent may not be living in the home, but they are present and involved in their child's lives. And we need our family law and our social systems to support that.
Yeah, hopefully they are, because I see two types of absentee fathers, those who just take off and want no interest or involvement with their family, and those who want to be involved but are held at bay by the courts and the financial laws.
And that first category that you described, I mean, that's what we do. We work with dads. I see that so seldom.
So, Johnny, because
that's quite rare.
But tell us about
dads want to be involved, and it's a complicated process. But in general, I can tell you, most dads that are not involved after a period of 3 to 5 years feel as if they were chased out. Now, I'm not giving them a pass, right? They should have stuck it out. They should have fought in the various ways that our legal system allows them to fight. Whatever. But these are also boys that were raised without that confidence, without that teaching boys how to be nurturers, right? And that they are valuable and important parents. Many of them didn't have active and involved fathers. And so it's very easy for them to, relatively easy for them to be told that they are actually a deficit for their kid. And if they believe that, and they love and are devoted to their child, and they believe they're a deficit, they will step out. And it'll break their heart, and unfortunately it also breaks their child's heart. Let me give you a quick example of a way that our systems can be better at supporting fathers, okay? Oftentimes, I hear about two parents that are split up, right? Yep. They both have to have incomes. They did when they were together. Now they really need both incomes, yep. Right? So their child is going to a daycare facility, right? But they're mad at each other for a period of time. Yep. And mom has primary custody, and mom gets mad at dad and tells the daycare people, Dad can't pick up the child, right? There's no court order, right? There's no designation that that father is abusive, right? Mom tells daycare that dad can't pick up the kid, and what does the daycare do?
Follows the instructions.
Follows the instructions, right? And they don't mean any harm generally either, right? But we don't understand as a society. That's not okay. One parent,
and you
mom
can
or
see
dad,
that
doesn't
escalating, because if the dad shows up and says, "I'm here to get my kids," well, we're going to call the cops, and
see why
and
he shows up,
right? Who's in trouble?
Yeah, most people don't realize that I'm a divorced dad. Now, Rose and I have been married for 26 years. We say we have 4 kids, my son from my first marriage, Dean, and 3 daughters that Rose and I have had together. My first wife and I were able to rise above the bitterness and the fighting, and we shared custody with my son. It was difficult, but it was beautiful. He grew up spending half the time with her and half the time with me. He's in his mid-30s. He's well-adjusted. He loves both his parents, and we love him. So it can be done. But what Johnny's saying, I've seen it so often with families and with the courts, and I think we need a better understanding socially between the adults that have put the kids in this situation and through the courts, so that men get an even shake when they deserve it.
Well, Johnny,
and just to
let me
promote,
ask you a question. Let's talk about your organization, Fathers New Mexico, because before we started talking about this segment, I actually didn't even know you guys' organization existed, and then I found you guys. When did you guys start? Tell us some of the programs, because I know we off the air were talking about some of the middle school programs, because we do believe that it starts at elementary school. I mean, it literally starts at elementary school with these fathers, and I see my sons. I mean, my sons, they love hanging out with me, even if it's just going to the 7-Eleven store or Walgreens today. But tell us a little bit about Fathers New Mexico and some of your programs.
So great. That's a big part of what Fathers New Mexico does, actually, is works with the young parents that we're involved with to help them if they're not with their other baby mama, right, is what the new terminology, right? Help them to understand the importance of collaboration and give them tools to do that. And we'll also help them through the pro se process if necessary, right?
So you actually offer legal help as well?
No. We are not attorneys, and we do not provide attorneys unless we have a volunteer attorney that's willing to give their time, which, if you're out there, please do. But the pro se process, the family court process in our district courts is actually set up to be quite friendly to families that do not have the resources for an attorney. And quite honestly, most families I would recommend, if you're splitting up and you got to figure out how to share responsibilities and time with the kids, do it without an attorney if it's at all possible, because
I agree. We waste more money, and my situation was like that. We did it on our own with minimal legalism, and it was hard work. I had something great happen a long time ago when this came about, but somebody recommended an old book called Mom's House, Dad's House. It's probably still in print, and it was a great help to me to realize that she was not my son's enemy, and I needed to treat her with respect. I couldn't talk bad about her in front of him, and it wasn't even healthy for me to think poorly of her. And it was hard, but it worked, and so it is possible. And I'm really glad to hear about your organization.
That's exactly the kind of work we do with these guys, is help them to understand the importance of respecting the other parent, that when you talk bad about the other parent around your kid, it's the kid is taking that insult.
And I see on my end, I've seen relationships like War of the Roses, where they just hate each other, and all they do is bag on the other parent. I'm like, all you're hurting at the end of the day is the kid.
The child.
If you love the kid, stop it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
stop
And it's
it.
amazing where I've seen, with my two sons, and I got married. I got married at 40. And my first marriage was at 40. My kids came at 46. So I always tell people I guess when I was a kid, I hated being the fourth child, but as an adult, all the stuff I learned, I guess I was wise enough to get.
You're going to be like me and be in your 60s and have kids in high school and everybody thinking you're grandpa.
Exactly. But in fact, most of the fathers I'm hanging out with are in their 20s and 30s.
That's right, yeah.
But I see specifically, since I have boys, I see with boys how much, it was so funny because the first 3 years I felt like my kids didn't want anything to do with me. Because with twins, they wanted mommy the whole time. And then a friend of ours is a child psychologist, and we were just having dinner one night, and I made a comment like, it's amazing because I feel like my sons don't want to spend any time with me. And they go, how old are they? And I go, they're about 3. They go, oh, gear up.
And see, with girls, it's kind of the opposite.
Right, and at 3 years of age, my sons decided, oh, that lady over there is always going to be around. Who's that guy? And then they bonded with me, and that's where boys. And it was funny because my wife Jackie, growing up with all girls, I was down on the ground, playing cars with them, wrestling with them, throwing them on the trampoline, and that's where a lot of the boys were learning those mannerisms. And in today's world, I see it. I mean, I see the attacks on little boys in elementary schools today, on my sons. And it's like we have to make sure that they have the tools to be good fathers, because are we throwing away a generation of boys? And that's what I'm really concerned about today.
You guys talked about something in the first segment that I want to counterbalance a little bit. Talked about the activities, the after school, scouts and sports and the different things like that. And I think those are very important. We came from a very low economic status when I was growing up, but my parents made sure we got involved. Today, I think we run the danger, especially for parents that have the means, of depending on that too heavily. We get in sports, and then we get into clubs, and then boom, our kids are gone. And we let my son be over-structured and take off on club teams during his teen years, and we missed out on a lot of his time. And you can get so many activities going that there's nothing going on that's a personal relationship between mom and dad and the kids, except for being a chauffeur.
You're right.
Yeah,
no, you're right.
time
And you blink your eyes. I can't believe my son's in 7th grade already, and it went. I mean, I was thinking, I have an old Nova that I want to build with him, and I'm like, if we don't get going on this now, it's not going to happen. Because it's going to, time is fleeting. And I think the one.
6 or 8 cylinders.
It's a straight 6. I'm going to put 350 in it.
By the way,
hang on.
I guarantee you people 30 and under don't even know what a Nova is.
So, Nova, remember?
Yes,
they had a big problem. But in all honesty now, you made me forget my thought.
Well, I'm going to take you back. I think you were talking about the unstructured time.
Yeah, okay,
right?
So here's my caveat. The one thing, and I don't care how late my kids get out of gym, because they get out, my son gets out at 8:30 at night. And that's late for a little one, That's late, having gone Monday through Friday. We have to come together and eat dinner. You can't be, I think that's the one thing missing in the family unit is a sense of spirituality, which you have to dig in and get, and eating dinner. Like, as simple as that, you've got to have time to decompress and catch up with each other.
Well, you can still enforce that, because as my kids are older, I have a high schooler and 2 in college. That disappears through their jobs and their activities.
How can you pull that back and find that valuable time?
But
It's
if
hard.
you've done it, even the older kids, even the adolescents, will find ways to access that energy that you created by having dinner every night together, or other shared activities, if it's going to church or if it's hiking or,
And it's hard. I'll tell you right now, with electronics and things like that. But I came home from a structured household like that I don't care. When my dad was governor, he came home from the office. We still had dinner together. He may have to go back during the session, but it was that family unit. And we're trying to structure that as best as possible in our household, because a lot of families don't do very
It's very
and it's
easy
very
to
important.
fall away from that.
It is. And to my son's credit, he has a very heightened sense of family. So he literally, as a 7th grader, will say, Dad, are we spending time as a family today? Yeah. And if he's getting that message from us, that's a win, in my opinion.
The other thing I think that as fathers we really have to be careful of, you guys are all very active, you're successful professionals, And, you know, we get our kids involved in activities, and then we've got our careers and things. And no matter how much we love our kids, it's easy for them to get the idea that we're absentee fathers when in our hearts and minds we're anything but. And this is just something that I'm coming across now as my daughters are in their 20s. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was at every sporting event, every parent-teacher conference. I stayed on the morning show for 30 years specifically so I could do that. But in their eyes, I was gone too much, and that kills me to think that now.
You know what hit me the other day is my 11-year-olds. I mean, what hit me the other day is like, Dad, put down your phone. Like they told me to put down my phone, and it's like, and so you have to remember sometimes because in today's world, especially working, doing like you said, Steve, you know, sometimes you kind of forget. So it's extremely important.
Frontier. I mean, that is one of the things we're finding in recent research about devices is that, in fact, parents are spending a lot of time with their kids, but looking at their devices.
Well, my sons thought Grandma and Grandpa were very.
That's not, and leaving the iPad is not a babysitter.
No,
you know.
But my sons thought Grandma and Grandpa, Grandma Jerry and Clara were really strict on me because they asked me, Daddy, when did you get your first phone? I said at 32. They're like 32, and I said, buddy, they didn't have phones when I was your age.
This was the biggest. This was the hardest thing for me as a dad. Is both of my kids now have cell phones.
We've given,
and it's almost like in modern day, it's almost a way where it takes so much stress off you to give your kid a phone because now I can call them, they can call me.
And that's very true. But it also takes away a ton of your access to them because they have access to friends that you don't know, to internet sites that can be damaging to all kinds of things.
We gave our kids phones this year, but it can only communicate with us or certain people. And so that way, it's also a strict thing. But look, we're going to have to wrap up this segment pretty soon. But let's talk very quickly. Steve, I mean, wrapping up this segment, what's your overall thought on fatherhood? What can parents do to reach out? What are you doing in the community?
I just want dads to know that you're important, and Johnny's group is focusing on that. Even if your family is split apart, you need to focus in on being part of your family's life. I just did a funeral. I'm a pastor at New Covenant Church. Did a funeral for a man that was 91 years old, and his adult daughters came across country to say that when he and Mom divorced, she ran from city to city and hid from him. And he would track us down and find us, and he would mail us packages with little dolls in it to let us know that he loved us, and we loved him till his dying day because of that.
How can people reach you and your organization? It's a great organization.
Thank you. FathersNewMexico.org is a great way to reach us. You can call me, 505-377-8950. I'm Johnny Wilson. I'm the ED. We can connect any fathers that would like services to one of our case managers. We provide just one-on-one support. We provide fatherhood groups. We also do a group for middle schoolers in some Santa Fe middle schools that's about exactly what you're talking about, connecting with with boys to recognize that they have needs that aren't being met in the schools. And I really appreciate you having us on. Thank you so much. I would just leave you with this thought that men care about their children. Support men in being the fathers they want to be.
Well, Steve Stucker, Johnny Wilson from Fathers New Mexico, thank you guys so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting us on.
Really
and stay tuned. We got a great topic coming up about schools right after this break.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
We are connected by rivers, by mountain ranges, by unique culture. But what connects us more than ever? Renewable energy from wind and solar, P&M delivers renewable energy every day to our homes, businesses, and institutions across the state.
And they are committed to 100% emissions-free energy by 2040.
After all, we call this home too. P&M, together for New Mexico.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Jeff Apodaca, Eric Strauss. Wonderful first couple segments so far.
A great segment.
Joining us now is Pat Reloba. He's a state representative and kind of a, I want to say, founding father of restorative justice. No, not founding, but you know, your big thing is restorative justice, which I'm learning a lot today.
Well, and actually, Sergeant Pat, how I met him, was at Atrisco High School, brought restorative justice to the program, ran for state senate, is one of our great state senators from the South Valley, represents and does a great job, and we become dear friends. And he's fighting for fathers, he's fighting for children, he's fighting for restorative justice programs. And anyway, I'm going to let you talk about it. But Pat, before we get started, talk about restorative justice, talk about Atrisco High School and the successes you've had there, because that's how we met on the campaign trail.
And then, by the way, father of 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, and you're still sane. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And you said it was easy, so we're going to talk about that as well. But go ahead, restorative justice.
Thank you. So just for a little clarity, I'm a state representative in Bernalillo County, South Valley. Love that community, born and raised there. I think one of the reasons why I ran is we were having a lot of issues with our youth. So I wanted to be able to support our kids in their schools and in the community. So restorative practices, restorative justice, it began for me right around 1998 when I was a police officer with the Albuquerque Police Department and I was working at Highland High School. And there was some issues around violations of the law and behavior. And what I wanted to do there is change the school-to-jail pipeline that not only is occurring in many of our schools in New Mexico, but nationwide. So, when you take away something, it has to be replaced with something else. Yeah. So that's kind of where the exploration of using different methods and alternatives to help modify students' behavior occurred.
Because I had no idea what restorative justice was, and it's really trying to take the harm that you've done and make something good out of it. Am I misspeaking on that, or is that kind of what I've kind of soaked in from listening to you?
Yeah, so the idea is really it does 2 things. It builds relationships, which is the components that we're using in schools, relationships between student and student, of course staff and student, and even the staff as well. We want to make sure that they're building relationships there. And the second component is to repair any harm that was caused because of that behavior.
From the student perspective.
From everyone's perspective, really,
yeah.
Because, we are seeing situations occurring in our schools where it's not 30-70, it's 50-50. 2 individuals probably could have used a different choice, chose not to, and it resulted
because
in
that's a big thing when you're dealing with teenagers. It's so easy to escalate a situation.
Yep.
Like what I've seen over my years of experience, because I was an administrator, so I would evaluate teachers, and you would see stacks of referrals from the same teachers, and at some point you had to ask yourself, this guy needs some intervention, because I think the teacher's heart's in the right place.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody goes into teaching
No.
because they don't like the job. I really think you have to have a basic love for the kids. But what I find is they start to bite on teenagers' behavior, and through their reactions, instead of de-escalating a situation, they make the situation worse.
Yeah, and I think students are good at recognizing if they're not getting what they need, they'll trap the teachers.
Yes.
And then the teachers respond accordingly, right? And it just creates this conflict that doesn't only affect the teacher and the student, but it affects the other students in the class. And then you add a layer with security coming into the room to kind of resolve what's going on there. And they're going to respond with the way they respond traditionally. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing is also training law enforcement on restorative justice and how to use restorative practices.
Talk about some of the successes that you've had. So let's talk about Atrisco High School, because that's where you started, right? And you brought these programs to Atrisco High School, which, before we met, Atrisco High School had the #1 suspension, kicked the kids out, troubled school, I would always hear. And then I met you.
And it was brand new.
And it was brand new, but all of a sudden, I meet you, and then all of a sudden you have these great successes, and the community has really corralled around that. Tell us about Atrisco High School, and I'm excited about how APS has grabbed onto this and is now going to try to roll this out across APS.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to continue when I went back into law enforcement is just to make sure that we're not arresting our young people. And I think there's some things that need an appropriate response to negative behavior. Like if a student is going to bring any weapons, we got to do what we have to do. But what we did there is really kind of focused on how do we reintegrate that student back into class so the behaviors don't occur. So once again, a lot of the initiatives that were created there came from interactions that I was having with students. So if I wasn't going to make a referral to the court, there was a family engagement component where I would talk to the families and get them to participate in supporting their change in their students' behavior. And then there was an after-school community engagement. And it was campus cleanup. And the custodians at the school really loved the initiative because, you know, they're under-resourced as well, but the campus looked beautiful. And I think the biggest thing I got from that is it provided me an opportunity to build relationships with these students that are kind of, they call them repeat offenders, or they were having challenges. And it was really awesome because as a police officer, I was able to build a relationship with these students so they would look past the uniform. You know, a lot of young people in some of the more challenging communities, they have a different lens on law enforcement. So I had to overcome that really and get the students to trust me. I wasn't their friend, and you know, I wasn't playing, you know, the role of their father. I was someone that they could trust, and it had to do with everything with building a relationship with them and then supporting them.
And I want to say something else because it's not always just needed schools or impoverished communities because, you know, we see some of these when Pat and I've got to know, and now restorative justice is a nationwide program. I mean, I see schools, when I was campaigning for governor, I saw schools all over the state and in high income areas also that had or needed some of these issues because it goes back to fatherhood, it goes back to single homes, it goes back to the lack of support we give these kids, and then they lash out, specifically in middle and high school, and their first response always was, let's just suspend the kids or send them home. And most high school kids, hell, that's what they want.
Well, when you look at the data, students of color represent a large population of not only incarcerated youth from schools, but also suspensions. And then if you look at some of the issues around our students with disabilities, it's almost 2 to 1 in some communities. So, I mean, we're trying to shift that lens around how do we engage every student. You're absolutely right, because it's just not for those groups. But we have to figure out how do we create the conversation to get our staff members to believe in the process. So restorative justice and restorative practices is not a program. It's a process. Right. And one of the benefits I think I saw for me is, you know, I was a cop and I knew what was out in the city and I wanted to make sure that my children understood, they were safe. Probably I shared more with them about what's really going on too early in their life. And I realized that as they were getting older, I was kind of indirectly creating this fear. Right? And I didn't want to do that. My wife and I really kind of had a plan, piggybacked off each other's ideas on how we deal with the challenges about social media. You know, I heard you all talking earlier about cell phones. We talked about, you know, when our kids were getting old enough to start working in relationships, when it was time to bring the guy or girl to meet us. We kind of like had a plan.
So you actually sat down with your wife and you guys mapped out a plan before your kids were getting in those ages?
Well, we were kind of not really sitting down and we were just kind of seeing what was happening and looking for any indicators that would result in us having a conversation.
Wants the white paper on that.
So I do want the white paper.
Well, you know,
I mean, who wouldn't? Right?
Well, I think it's really kind of like what I've recognized since starting the work, and I see it nationwide is we're losing connections with one another. And I always tell this story. You know, I live in the community I was raised in, and I know all my neighbors, and we still see each other, and we wave. And, you know, if you move out, because I moved out of my neighborhood for a little bit, and I moved into a community, they didn't know I was there. They weren't really engaged as a community. So when we're talking about crime occurring, you know, I remember answering a call where a moving van backed up into a house, loaded everything up. And when I was talking to the neighbors, they're like, well, we thought that they were moving. So the whole idea of really our initiative is bringing people back together to connect. So raising our kids, we were paying attention. And I'm just going to say, you know, my wife was so much better at it than I was. And she had to chill me out a lot because, you know, I come with the safety thing. But as our kids got older, I had to look at how I interacted with them differently as well. And when I think about what we were doing and what's happening in schools, and even when I'm creating policy around it, we have to look at each adolescent phase differently, right? And look for the indicators that are going to provide that information for us to have those interventions.
So let me, because you're a state legislator, you're up there fighting all the time during the session. APS is always screaming about funding. I've seen funding cut more and more back from after-school programs and things like that. What is the state, now let's put your legislator hat on, what is at the state level are we doing to help these type of programs, these type of fundings? We just funded $600 million plus into education, early child education, which I think we all agree is important. But what are we doing at the state level? What's happening at the Washington level that we think could help you out and help our school systems out?
So I know that funding is always the question that comes up with what we're doing with initiatives. But what I've seen working in the district is the school districts are doing a lot of awesome stuff that probably we as legislators should be looking at and creating policy based on that, you know. But we don't do that. We look at data and situations or constituent calls and we're like, oh, we need to fix that. But one of the things that I really appreciate about Albuquerque Public Schools is the leadership, the superintendent has a vision, and she's put a team of associates around her to also kind of buy into this vision. And what they're really doing now from my interactions with them is they're doing stuff now that we're going to see benefit in 10 years. And that's the way I look at policy because, you know, I may not get elected the next cycle. I believe I am because I really appreciate my community.
We believe your community will re-elect you, and we're hoping for that.
But in reality,
I can't endorse anything right now. So
I endorse him.
I don't know how you're
I will
endorsing.
tell you, I don't live in the South Valley. He does a great job.
As a
Re-elect him.
legislator, I kind of look at what can I do now around policy that's going to have great benefit in the future, you know, and I don't know if we look at it like that in New Mexico or even throughout the nation. So I really appreciate what's happening in our.
I was amazed on the campaign trail how I would meet with Pat, I would meet with your counterparts, and I would meet with teachers, and how they had never talked to legislators whatsoever. So anyway, Pat, we have to wrap it up, but thank you so much.
Thanks for
We
coming
really
in.
appreciate all your stuff that you do. Keep up the good work, and God bless you.
Oh, thank you. And
Okay.
good luck with the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
We are connected by rivers, by mountain ranges, by unique culture. But what connects us more than ever? Renewable energy from wind and solar. P&M delivers renewable energy every day to our homes, businesses, and institutions across the state.
And they are committed to 100% emissions-free energy by 2040.
After all, we call this home too. P&M, together for New Mexico.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Your hosts, Jeff Apodaca, Eric Strauss. We want to thank all of our sponsors today. I also want to give a plug to Beds for Kids. That's Steve Stucker's charity, Beds for Kids with a Z.org. If you can get on there, the nice thing about Steve Stucker is they're not picky. If you have linens, right now he's trying to collect linens for beds. Right. So if they're gently used, brand new, if you want to buy a set, drop them off. Beds for Kids with a Z.org. And the phone number, 505-218-7012. So I promised him I'd give him a plug for that.
And you know what? And we really appreciate it. This has been a great topic today. Our sponsors, Indigo Mortgage, P&M.
Why am I forgetting my other
Anyway,
sponsors?
our sponsors. Thank you guys so much.
P&M, Indigo Mortgage, and Ryan Sowenback, who has been a wonderful sponsor. Also my brother. If you have sewing machine needs or vacuum needs, get in there. He has classes, everything. It's state of the art.
But today, Eric, we talked about fatherhood today, and you know, I probably skewed a little bit more towards boys because I see it, my sons. State Representative Relobo. Pat is a great state representative. He has a great programs. Fathers New Mexico is another great program.
Yeah.
But one of the things I want to talk about is, as you as a teacher, because what I have seen within the structure of our school system for our kids is if you have a child that thinks outside the box, or if you have a child that might be doing other things that's not within that structure, it's almost like they get penalized. It's almost like they get.
This is my twofold rub. Many times, I see mijito syndrome.
Right.
So parents get sold this bill of goods by a kid, and it's just like in a divorce. If a parent is beating up another parent after the divorce, they're only getting 50% of the story.
Right.
And the real issue with kids that I've seen over the years, especially with teenagers, is you can trust your teenager but verify. Trust but verify. There are parents that come in and think their kid can do no wrong. There are parents that just believe every golden nugget out of their kids' mouths. And I guarantee you, it's just like Pat Reloba said, it's usually a 50-50 split.
Right.
I can guarantee you kids get smart quick. And if they see they can push their parents' buttons by saying the right verbiage, because they hear it, they soak it in, I just get nervous about, look, in my opinion, that's why I'm a huge fan of charter schools. You've got to find a charter school that fits your kid.
Well,
and that's why I love the charter model.
Well, and again, the charter model I'm not against, but what we have to look at is in certain communities like Santa Fe, charters have popped up because other parents don't want their kids going to public schools. And my philosophy on the charter schools is, and I think Pat said it the best, all our guests actually said it the best, it takes a community, it takes family, fathers working together from the bottom up, not the top down. Charter schools, I think, are great in communities that's a need. If those charter schools are working, then we should put them in the public school systems and work with that way. But again, when you look at it, some of the structure that we have, fathers need to be involved, and I think at every level. And I think what we see more importantly is specifically with boys, when kids don't have their fathers involved, when kids don't have the community involved, kids struggle. We continue cutting at the state level and at the federal level. We continue to cut programs after programs that are forcing these kids, and it's hurting boys more than girls within elementary schools, middle schools, and we're seeing huge dropouts of young boys in high schools because of these programs.
Well, and part of the problem is, too, is sometimes it's not just that they're cutting programs, it's that they're bringing programs on, and then they get rid of the program, then they bring a new program, and then they get rid of that program, and they bring a new program, and it's program after program after program, instead of using your common sense and seeing what programs are really effective. Like, for instance, I don't know if you Scared Straight. Remember that program? I mean, that's a program that was working, and what did they ultimately do? They cut it. Right? And then they try to bring it back. But it's like, if something's working, why are they cutting it? And then they bring in these fluff programs, and here's the problem with program after program after program. Many of and I'm sorry, but some of these programs are somebody's friend. They fund the program, and because it's a friend, and it's really not an effective program. And then what does the community learn? Well, that's just another fly-by-night program.
We have found, we've gone through the PED budget, and we have found over $280 million that I believe has gone wasted to either programs that we know that don't work or out-of-state contracts.
Correct.
And
why are we spending money on
that was my point. So that's what I think we've talked about is we've seen a lot of issues. We've talked a lot about issues from all our guests today. But my point is we have plenty of money in our state, and we fund the right programs, and we fund bad programs. I think Pat said it the best during commercial break, so maybe Facebook people saw it. But he said, what we need to do is focus on programs that are working.
Don't reinvent the wheel every time. Because just like he said, if representatives would take a minute, go sit in on some high school classes, go sit in on visit schools.
It amazes me.
It should be a requirement that they have to go. If you're going to be on the education committee, here's a requirement of the education committee. You want to be on the education committee? You have to visit 5 schools, 2 high schools, 1 middle school, 2 elementary, 3, whatever you want to mix it up. But you cannot vote on that committee lest you've spent time in New Mexico schools.
I don't disagree.
And I think that should be a requirement of that. Why aren't they putting former teachers? If you have a former teacher that's in the roundhouse, why aren't they on the education committee?
Well, my point-
regardless of the
you know,
RRD.
We're going to need
regardless
that
of the
talking stick. We're going to
RRD.
need that talking
Yeah.
stick. No, I agree with you there because we continue putting programs. An example is K+3. We know that program works. So, you know, we've cut funding from that program. Now funding has come back from that program. We spend millions of dollars on out-of-state programs, out-of-state contracts, when we know that we have to work from the community up. There are people like Pat that's out there working with individual schools that are working from community up. We have to engage the community. We have to engage
I can
parents.
tell you a bill that I pushed and pushed and pushed for was the reading bill. They kept calling it the failing bill because it was carried by a Republican. But if we push to the middle and we say by third grade, if you can't read, you need interventions, how can not R and Ds agree on that?
Well, that's why
And that's in the middle right there.
Right. No, I agree.
The
I
other
agree.
thing I'm hearing from you in the middle is let's spend our money responsibly on programs that are tried and true and work. I think that's a middle thing we both can agree on.
And we agree on that we have to work from the community up. Top down is not working. We have now, because of federal funding, and I get it. That's why sometimes my Democratic friends have battled with me because, you know, I don't believe if our U.S. senators are doing the right thing. I almost feel like, you know, grant funding, which just gives us a big chunk of money and we don't have to follow federal guidelines. You know, Texas does that. Other states do that have more resources than that. I get it. But my point is only New Mexicans know how to educate our children.
Yeah.
And if we can meet with teachers, if we can meet with truant officers, work on programs that we know that are successful, I think we can do a lot better job.
I have never been a fan of a federal Department of Education. I have no idea how that got pushed uphill. And how any initiative from there can get pushed down to a South Valley school.
Well, hey, we're going to go to commercial break. We're going to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us so far.
In 2 minutes, we're going to show where we meet in the middle.
That's right.
That's right.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
Welcome back to Meet in the Middle. Your host, Jeff Apodaca, Eric Strauss. Look, at this point, I really want to we in the middle, we can both agree that fathers are a vital part of the family unit.
I agree with that. We agree with that. We also agree that we have to look at our state funding and look at programs that are working. We've talked about programs today that we know work, that benefit boys and girls. Look, we have a major dropout rate, not only with boys, but in our school system here. We've continued cutting out programs. We both agreed. Let's meet in the middle and let's work from the community up with community leaders.
Let's get sports started. Let's get sports programs started in elementary school, middle school, and in high school.
And not only sports,
because the middle school sports have come back a bit, but archery, clubs like that,
but even activities. That's why
I agree.
We're doing a fundraiser for our reunion in Santa Fe to help raise money for those programs, and that's what's extremely important.
So we can meet in the middle on let's spend money on education wisely and let's spend it on things that have been tried and true.
And let's get the teachers involved from the community up. Let's get the community involved, but we have to get single fathers. There's help out there. Fathers New Mexico's
and
out there.
And if you're divorced and you're fighting with your spouse, find a way to build a bridge. Find a way to keep the kids' interest at the forefront and the love you have for your children at the forefront of relating to that that ex-wife or that ex-husband.
And we know that our kids are going to leave our state, and they're the workforce for the future.
We need them here.
We need them here.
That we can agree
We
on.
talked about it. 9% of our youth is leaving. So
that we can agree on.
So this week, first week we talked about politics and how our beliefs. This week was fatherhood. I think we had a lot of agreement here. Next week is immigration and the wall. And I'm sure.
Are we doing that? No.
Yeah, that's what you picked. So next week's will be
I don't know
immigration.
that's on our list. Maybe,
next
possibly,
week is
unless we
immigration.
change our minds.
Next week is immigration on the wall. Tune in next week. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for watching. Keep fighting and never give up.
Make a difference.
You can find Let's Meet in the Middle on Facebook at Meet in the Middle NM, or email us at meetinthemiddlenm@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter at meetinthemidnm. Phone us at 505-345-1991 and also on Instagram at Let's Meet in the Middle NM. This is a production of the Sun Broadcasting Network.